My view, I think the question that we should really be addressing and asking ourselves is, where are we? There are things that were normal just a few days ago. Suddenly they are no longer normal. And I think to understand the abnormal nature of our environment is very fundamental to understanding why fake news has become so, what's the word to use? Why it becomes such an attractive menu, and why many of us, including myself, spend quite a lot of time on it. In fact, because either we've got very little to do that is important, or that there is very little out there that is sufficiently significant. I think this is one of the moments in the history of our nation, of our country, that we are so underserved in terms of what government is really saying and what it wants to say. And whatever anybody may say, the truth of the matter, philosophically, I've always been against the idea of a minister for information. In part because I believe that structuring information is a function of, it legitimizes not only citizens, but it promotes propaganda with the assumption that citizens are not capable of making up their minds. I think, in my view, that what government should be doing is to be able to give us the coherent information that we require to be able to make up our minds. Unfortunately, as we've seen in the last few years, we've had a situation in which citizens have been chasing government policies and reports. Is there a license for a full day radio? Whom was it given to? Somebody says to me, oh, it was just being discussed, and suddenly, is there a Ruga policy? It turns out, so really the point I'm making is that there is a huge information deficit. And this is what has made fake news such an attractive alternative for the rest of us. The second point is, you can look at fake news as theology, right? You can look at fake news as sociology. You can look at it as politics, as economics, as psychology, as anthropology. In my view, it's multidimensional. If you look at it as theology, perhaps the first fake news, no, not fake news, but the first hate speech was uttered by Cain. When God said to him, where is your brother? He said, am I my brother's keeper? But if you look at fake news and how it is fed and what really feeds it, it is the sociology of it. And there is a fantastic book. It was a popular study by an American professor called Ted Gunner. The whole concept of what he called relative deprivation, which is that people in societies live by comparing their conditions with those of others. And when they perceive that others are benefiting more than them, the assumption is that you are better off because I'm worse off. And as a result, what then happens is that we set a society on this endless antagonism and so on and so forth. But if we look at hate speech as politics, or fake news as politics, then we also must understand that in a state of war strategists actually say that disinformation is a legitimate tool of war. So the point to make is that we must also be a bit more discerning, because there is information that is going out there that is purposely just meant to distract us. And I think that here, one of the interesting things with this country is that, we have very little, first of all, our thinking is linear. And secondly, we have a very short attention span. So there is a policy, we all disagree, foam in the mouth, get excited, and then finally we go home, and we believe the problem has been solved. It's amazing that since 1979, we've been debating Sharia, and it has never improved in terms of content or quality or direction, until Babangida decided to shut it out in 1988. OIC, we started in 1986, 87, Guardian and so on. How did we end up? We have no idea. Ruga policy, we are debating how we're going to end up, we don't know. Somehow there will be a reprieve and everybody will go home until the problem resurfaces again. So I make the point, therefore, that if you take hate speech or fake news as politics, then you are in the realm of propaganda. And philosophically, we must understand that the mistake we make is to assume that everybody subscribes to democracy. And as we can see across the continent, and not least in Nigeria, There are people who actually subscribe to democracy simply because it is the only boss that was leaving town. But their destination, their intention was completely different. So almost like in the case of, the fascist movement, that you have people who believe their principles are different and what their objectives are different. But if democracy is what is taking us to where we're going, let's get on it, but our destination and our intention is completely different. So what we now call fake news are multi-layers of conversations, but they are also feeding off our already existing prejudices. I'm sure there are variations of this story about a bus that had an accident. You can choose the location, somewhere in Obomosho. And the policeman goes and sees this Adebayo who is hanging around. He says, "Oga, you dey here when this accident happened?" He said, "Yes, I dey here, sir." So what happened? The accident fatal. He said, "Oga, what did be fatal?" He said, "Like, people die." He said, "No, people not die, sir. Only 3 Gambari die." Okay, so people not die. Only 3 Gambari die. That is because for him, if you are Gambari, you are not a human being. But if you take that story to Yola, which was told to me by Yayele, is that this bus driver is driving. Maybe it's Tunde, maybe it's Chukuma. And he's stopped by the police. They say to him, "This bus is overloaded." The guy looks, he said, "No." He said, "But how many people are in?" He said, "No, we've got 14 people and 3 Igbos." The point I'm making is, when you take these stories around, you can replicate them. But when you hear bad things about people you are already predisposed to listen to, then the story improves with telling. Take a simple story. Every time somebody who becomes an expert in gossip, every time gossip moves from one lip to the other, it increases the excitement. Have you heard? Did you hear? And it will be boring if you tell exactly what it was that you heard. So really, let me try and end by saying, look, what we're talking about, what we now call hate speech, has always been with us. And whether it is our colonial history, it also has intellectual legitimacy and justification. The Kiplings of this world, the Conrads of this world, the Jonathan Swifts of this world, that their intellectual contribution laid the foundation for colonialism. And with the assumption that somehow black people, that state, was legitimate to enslave black people. And we got to a point in which it was actually legitimate to do so because anthropologically evidence had been exhumed to prove that we were less human. I think there are quite a lot of people that still believe so. And when you hear the things coming out of Trump, you can say that we have not really covered a lot of distance on this journey. So finally, can we deal with the issue of hate speech without denying ourselves the freedom of speech enshrined in the Constitution? Now, the question is, many people will say, and the literature out there insists, and I think Reiko made the point, do we resolve the problem by legislation? The truth be told, this is not a country of laws. That is the truth of the matter. Nigeria is not a country of laws. It's neither a respecter of laws. Those who make the laws don't respect the laws from top to bottom. This is what we are still debating, Dasuki, Zaki. So at the highest level. So the laws exist, but somehow we are made to believe that it will be strange if you take them seriously. So the first thing to say is that we are not a nation of laws. But secondly, and I think almost as an ideological expression, are you legislating for or are you legislating against? We tend to legislate against. But I think that the business of law is to create a condition which, and I just read very briefly by way of ending, what Martin Luther King said in his great speech. That every constitution, if you read the speech, the Gettysburg speech that was delivered by Abraham Lincoln in November 1763, you will see very clearly that very short speech, less than 300 words, but it captured the philosophical basis for a new America. And when Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, I think many of us have done, go back and read the speech very carefully. And I just conclude by reading my favorite part of the speech. Because I think in the final analysis, hate speech, whatever, the conditions are created by a combination of factors. Whether it's poverty, whether it's a feeling of helplessness, whether it's a feeling of despair, whether it's a feeling of not trusting the system or not trusting anybody. So whatever comes. And the Bible itself says that in the book of Revelation, the most dangerous thing, it says, God says, the reason why I'm angry with you is that you are neither hot nor cold. But if you were hot, it's okay. That Agbese has had me say this. Imagine most of you here are married. So you go back home this afternoon or this evening. Your wife says, hello honey, welcome. What are you going to eat? I don't know. Do you feel like eating? I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. Well, she can deal with an idea that I don't want to eat. But if you say you don't know, then there is a problem.